So I'd like you to rewind 10 years and to take yourself to a Sex and the City speed dating party in a London bar not a million miles from where we are today. It's noisy and sweaty, and I find myself sitting opposite a nice, slightly awkward young doctor. He asks me what I do, and I tell him that I'm an underwater documentary maker. He's intrigued, as am I, because this is not true. I am not an underwater documentary maker. The bell rings, and I move on. This time, I'm an aid worker. Then I'm a photographer. Then I'm a PhD candidate. And finally, before I have time to elect myself into government, the bell rings, and it's all over. So, compulsive lying isn't normally how I roll. And after the tequila hangover wore off and I've had a decade's worth of experience, I can now understand my speed dating dishonesty to be a mixture of shame and utility. So sitting opposite a stranger with 5 minutes on the clock, it felt easier to lie than to tell the truth about what I really did. Not because my occupation was scandalous, but because it was plural. Like, I did and do many different things, and often it takes me more than 5 minutes to explain. So while I never lied that blatantly again, over the next 10 years, I'd often find myself only telling part of the truth. So while advising a foreign government on environment policy, I wouldn't tell them that I was also writing a screenplay in Afghanistan. While working with an NGO on their campaign strategy, I wouldn't tell them that I was also writing magazine articles about Pakistani TV. And while pitching ideas to magazine editors, I definitely wouldn't tell them that I was setting up something called an innovation lab. Like, are you confused? Because, I mean, imagine how I felt. So I thought that I had to hide the diversity of my skills or risk being called a dilettante. I thought that expertise was only achieved through exclusivity. And I don't think that today. In fact, the reason I'm here is because I believe the opposite. I believe in the power of polymaths and the genius of generalists. And I don't want you, the generalists and polymaths here today, to apologize for your diversity and to cull your skills in the name of focus. So I'm going to tell you something that I really wish someone had told me 10 years ago, which is that the world needs you in all your multifaceted glory. That developing diverse skills can amplify your impact, not diminish it. And that all of us, specialists and generalists alike, can learn from the craft of the polymath. And to the specialists out there, I salute you. I spent most of my life wanting to be like you. And if today I emphasize the importance of the generalist, it's not to diminish your value. It's just to rectify a scale that's been rather too tilted in one direction over the last century. So, let's get some things straight. To be a polymath, you do not have to be Leonardo da Vinci incarnate. The word comes from the Greek poly for many and manthein for learning. So it means many learnings. It doesn't mean you have to be a genius in many areas. It doesn't mean you have to be a particle physicist by day, a Booker-winning novelist by night, and winning marathons on the weekend. You just need to be skilled in diverse areas. And for a really long time, from ancient Greece to Rome to China to Renaissance Italy, the polymath was highly valued. It was only with the advent of industrialization that we began to understand expertise as being about the narrowing of knowledge rather than the broadening of it. So the specialization of the division of labor didn't only apply to Henry Ford and his car manufacturing lines, but they also applied to intellectual labor. And I'm not denying that gave us some amazing things, from cars to contraception. But did that come at a cost? Is what Aldous Huxley has called the celibacy of the intellect the price that we had to pay for that progress? Because today we all specialize, and we specialize young. And while that can give us great benefit, there's also the danger of developing tunnel vision and of growing up with a really partial and fragmented view of the world. And when it comes to the scale and complexity of the problems we face today, that's just not good enough. The time has come to move beyond the age of the monomath. The problems of our time demand it of us. Take something like climate change. A problem so vast and complex, whose solutions are technical, scientific, political, cultural. There is no one genius scientist who is going to come in and solve the problem. There is no one charismatic social entrepreneur who's going to come in and save the day. Like, there is not a silver bullet. Sir Nicholas Stern, after the last UN climate summit, said that if we're going to have any chance of avoiding catastrophic climate change, we have to have greater ambition, cooperation, and collaboration. And that's where the polymath comes in. Because polymaths are like magnets for collaboration. These are the people who speak different professional languages, who live in different professional communities and can unite those worlds. They're the people who bridge sectors, who can see holes, literally who can see the wood for the trees. And they're also the people who can innovate through cross-fertilization. The author Stephen Johnson says that this is how most innovation actually occurs. It's bricolage rather than breakthroughs. And our history is littered with examples. Charles Babbage borrowed the technology of the silk loom to develop the antecedent of the computer. Gutenberg borrowed the technology of the wine press to develop the printing press. And polymaths are perfectly placed to make those kinds of innovative connections between different realms of knowledge, both within themselves and out in the world. So we should be harnessing that power. The power of polymaths was brought home to me really recently, when a couple of days after Christmas, I discovered that one of my closest friends had died very suddenly in an accident. And as I mourned the loss of my friend, the world's environmental movement mourned the loss of one of its most visionary young leaders, Becky Tarbottom. It's thanks to Becky that the 8 biggest banks in the US have limited their funding to companies who practice mountaintop removal coal mining. It's thanks to Becky that Disney and its 1,700 company subsidiaries no longer source their paper from Indonesian rainforests. Like, in her short life, Becky had this enormous impact. And like, in those dark days just after her death, I realized that so much of Becky's power came from the fact that she was herself, like all of them. So yes, she was the strategist and the protester, but she was also the dancer, the fiddle player, the sea kayaker. And the fact she lived in all these different worlds gave her this incredible social dexterity, which meant that she was equally comfortable with a banner outside the White House, or drinking cocktails with film stars at galas, or playing her fiddle on a campaign video. And that meant she could bring people together. Like the achievements I talked about before, she didn't do that by herself. She did that because she could bring different worlds together to make change happen. And for me, Becky shows us that a plural life can be a powerful one. But whether you choose to take a plural or singular approach to your career, we can all learn from the ABC of the polymath. So A is for Autodidacts Anonymous. So yes, hello, my name is Ella and I am addicted to learning. You need to keep learning. Like, don't stop once you leave formal education. Create your own curricula, write your own reading lists, form your own study groups. I used to think that learning was a sign of immaturity and that one day I'd grow up and stop learning because I'd finally know with a capital K. I don't think that anymore. I think constant learning is a sign of wisdom. And we have a living, breathing embodiment of that with us in the audience today in the form of my grandma Edith. Hello, Grandma. My 94-year-old grandma Edith. This is a woman who, having been told her whole life she couldn't sing, in her 80s joined a choir and sung in front of huge audiences. This is Grandma Edith who, at the age of 92, started using an iPad, and at the age of 93, started her first Tai Chi class. Constant learning is a sign of wisdom, and it might help us all live longer, too. B is for balance, specifically the balance between humility and confidence. So, if you take a plural approach to your career, there's pretty much always going to be someone who knows more than you about any given topic. And what that means is that you basically have to be a massive nerd. You need to do the graft. You need to put the work in. Like, take today, for example. Like, I wish I could say that I just got up here and ad-libbed for 15 minutes. But you want the dirty laundry? I bought a book called How to Give a TED Talk. I studied a lot. And finally, I watched a video called Reverse Engineering the Perfect TED Talk. So apparently, I need to use the words mind, coffee, and happiness, which I've now done. I mustn't cite the New York Times, and I should wear blue clothes. But this isn't a nerdiness that's born of insecurity. Remember, B is for balance. It needs to be accompanied by a confidence that comes from an understanding that you have just as much right to use this knowledge as any specialist, as anyone else. A confidence that's born of an understanding that when you recombine knowledge from different areas, you are contributing something to the world. And finally, C is for seeing like a goat. So apparently goats have amazing peripheral vision, almost 360 degrees, and that's what you need. You need to ask yourself, what's just beyond what I'm working on now? Like, scan the horizon. What do you see? Who else is asking the same questions you are from other disciplines? Where can you find them? Like, develop amazing peripheral vision. And so there you have it. You just need to be addicted to learning, be a confident nerd, and see like a goat, and the world will be a better place. So if we're going to have a chance dealing with the enormous problems we face right now, we have to all work together so that we're more than the sum of our parts. But each of us as individuals have to make sure that we are truly the sum of our parts. And so to all the generalists out there, stand up and be counted. Like, don't hide your skills in a quest for credibility. Don't reduce your passions in order to focus. So what if a doctor at a speed date can't understand what it is that you do in 5 minutes. So what if you can't reduce your glorious humanity down to a couple of words? To paraphrase Walt Whitman, you are vast. You contain multitudes. Now let them live. Thank you.